Good morning, dear. Today we have to study the last activity in the nervous communication about synapses. At the end of this video, students will be able to define a synapse, list the structural types of synapses, draw and label a functional diagram of a synapse, and finally explain the chemical nature of the transmission of the nervous message at the level of a synapse. As you see in this video showing many nerve cells or neurons, the main function of a neuron is to transmit nervous messages. This is a nervous message or many messages which are transmitted by these nerve cells or neuron. We know that the neurons are responsible to transmit messages from the dendrite to the cell body to the axon and to the second neuron, dendrite, cell body, and the axon. The nervous message is always unidirectional. But how are these nerve cells connected together? And how does the transmission of a nervous message occur between two nerve cells? So we have to study the synapse. It's the zone of junction, the contact point between two neurons or between a neuron and an effector cell. These are many neurons. The synapse is between two neurons like this, or between a neuron and an effector cell. It's the zone of junction or the contact point between these two neurons. I have two structural types of synapses. If I look to this synapse, it's between the first neuron and the second neuron. So the synapse is called neuronal synapse since it's between two neurons. While this one is between a neuron and a muscle. The muscle is an effector cell, so this is a neuromuscular synapse. What is the structure of a synapse? This is a synapse between two nerve cells. It's a neuronal synapse. Under microscope, the synapse is made up of two main parts. The first one, which is the blue, is called presynaptic neuron. It refers to the first neuron. The second one is called postsynaptic neurons, and it refers to the second neuron or the nerve cell. Here we have two neurons. Between two parts, I have a small gap called synaptic cleft. So the first part is called the presynaptic neuron, the second one the postsynaptic cell. Between them I have a small gap called synaptic cleft. Now what do I have inside the presynaptic neuron? These small sacs, I have many sacs called vesicles of neurotransmitters. The second organelle is the mitochondria, the source of energy in the cell. These vesicles contain neurotransmitter. In the postsynaptic cell, I have these structures called receptor. So, the neurotransmitters are in the presynaptic neuron and the receptors in the postsynaptic cell. But what are the neurotransmitters? From the name, neuro, which means the nerve, and the transmitter means the transmission. So they are chemical substances that have to transmit the message across a synapse. These are the neurotransmitters. They are synthesized in the presynaptic neuron only, and they have to bind to their specific receptors on the postsynaptic cell. So they are synthesized here and released to bind there on the postsynaptic cell. So this is a synapse under microscope. If we make a zoom in, we have to see the presynaptic axon referring to the first part, the first nerve cell, and the postsynaptic dendrite referring to the second cell, separated both by a synaptic gap or cleft. Now, if I look to the postsynaptic cell, I see many sodium channels coupled to the receptors of the neurotransmitters. After the arrival of the action potential from the presynaptic axon, neurotransmitters are released in the synaptic gap. Then they have to bind to their specific receptors on the postsynaptic dendrite. After their binding to their specific receptors, the sodium channels should open. So many sodium ions penetrate inside the cell, which leads to a depolarization of the membrane of the cell. So, inside becomes more positive than outside. So, the action potential is transmitted from the pre to the postsynaptic cell. To stop the depolarization of the postsynaptic region, enzymes are present. When the neurotransmitter are broken down by these enzymes, sodium channels close and the outside of the postsynaptic membrane returns to its normal positive charge. So, the steps of the transmission of a nervous message across a synapse are summarized in this slide. This is the presynaptic neuron, the synaptic cleft, and the postsynaptic cell. The first step is the arrival of action potential to the terminal buds of the presynaptic neuron. The second step, exocytosis of vesicles, which means the release of the neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. Third, binding of neurotransmitters to their specific receptors on the postsynaptic membrane. 4. Change in the potential of the postsynaptic membrane. 5. Neurotransmitters are rapidly broken down by enzyme or recaptured by the presynaptic terminal. After studying the synaptic transmission, we noticed that the vesicles containing neurotransmitter are only found in the presynaptic cell, and their specific receptors are only found on the postsynaptic cell. This ensures information transmission only occurs from presynaptic cell to the postsynaptic cell. So this transmission is called unidirectional. It has only one direction from presynaptic to the postsynaptic cell.